What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the Counting Wisdom podcast. As the day draws near, I wanted to talk about that. Before it gets started, hey, you can go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you're interested. And thanks for listening. So, I see a lot of messages on how we're in the last days, that, it must be the last days. And I totally agree that we're in the last days. I just think that, we can only see the day drawing near. And, any message that you hear that says, oh, I know the rapture is going to be this date or this year, I just think, I'm skeptical about those type of messages. But anyway, the day is going to come where Jesus returns, and we have to be ready for that day. And, the signs in the world, lawlessness and secret lawlessness, I believe why we don't necessarily fully see the true outward public display of lawlessness all the time is because it's in secret. And the Bible even says that it's in secret, that, people are in their homes or in buildings, in the darkness, in a literal sense, but also figuratively too. But, people are committing sins in secret where, you just don't hear someone saying, oh, I did this sin last night. No, people are not going to talk about it. But there's going to come a day where the one restraining the lawlessness is taken away. And so that's going to be more of a public display of lawlessness. And it's going to be, I can only speculate, but it's going to be like Lot living in Sodom and Gomorrah, where there's just more outward displays of lawlessness. I think it's more, depending on where you live in the world, you're going to see more lawlessness. I know that there are a few cities that have fallen already. And, to me, that's a huge sign of the end times, is when you see whole nations or whole cities just in chaos. And that would be Haiti. The nation of Haiti is, I believe, from the news and from videos that I see, Haiti has fallen. And there's gangs running the country. And then another place I believe is I believe it's Afghanistan, where the Taliban just took over. And I say just took over, but I think this was about a year ago now, now that time has passed. But, and then, I think it's Sudan, has also fallen and it's in chaos. And so I believe, we're going to see more and more cities going down. In America, we know Chicago is, worse and worse, getting worse by the day. And so to me, that's a huge sign, because of God mentioning Sodom and Gomorrah, mentioning, specific cities that have gone under. And so as we see the day drawing near, we are going to really be witnessing more and more events that really point to Christ returning. I think we also have seen those events throughout the years. Just from seeing old movies about the rapture back in the 90s or in the 80s, we see that people for a number of years have been seeing the day drawing near. And so, to me, I think it's a slower progression. Of course, I think I also take the standpoint that, Jesus could return tomorrow or, tonight, because, Jesus did say he's going to come as a thief in the night. And to me, once the whole world gets into that state of, sin has reached its full measure, then God is going to return. And, once that day comes, every day after that day is just going to be unknown to us of when Jesus is going to actually return and rapture the church. And, I believe that God would tell us more clearly, in my opinion, if we were to, live in the mountains or store up food or buy guns and, prepare for, surviving the tribulation. I think a lot of these things we can start to, do on our own. Like, when Abraham was given a promise, he went to sleep with Hagar before, he actually got his own son through Sarah. And so I think in the same way, sometimes we can come up with our own ideas about, how the end times can play out. And I don't think the rapture is one of those ideas. I think, the rapture is a real expectation that we can have in Jesus, that, before the tribulation and just at the right time, God will take us out of the world. Because, Revelation 3:10 says that he will preserve us from the hour of trial. Now, it is written to a specific church. And so, we read that verse in a way of just applying it to our life. But we're also not appointed to wrath. And so, even if the tribulation were to happen, we're not appointed to wrath, so it wouldn't even affect us anyway. And so the only thing that the Bible really describes is Christians being beheaded in the tribulation. And to me, we can go back to the parable of the 5 wise virgins and the 5 foolish virgins, that, they were ready and they went into the wedding feast, and the other ones were left behind. And that's a clear left behind verse. And so, I did recently see a pastor who was just showing on YouTube his off-grid cabin. And my point is that, okay, what about the rest of us that maybe, don't have, extra money to buy a cabin in the woods? Or, what about the rest of us who, maybe don't have the land or the, ability to store up food or, to purchase land and, you know, do all those things that a person would do to survive the tribulation. To me, that's just someone coming up with their own idea. Granted, I could see the value in that, but at the same time, what about the people that can't do that? They, what, should work more hours or try to find a better job and then save up money? Then what if the tribulation happens while they're doing all that, and they are a righteous person or, something like that, then it's kind of weird, and so, I think the final conclusion is that Jesus promises, to preserve someone out of the hour of trial. And he did say, be counted worthy. Pray always that you will be counted worthy to escape all that will happen and to stand before the Son of Man. And to me, when he says to stand before the Son of Man, clearly there is some rapture to heaven in order to stand before the Son of Man. Granted, I think these verses that I'm mentioning in Revelation 3:10 or in the book of Luke could be translated or could be viewed differently, by another person. But, God spoke to Noah, and he told him clearly what to do. It wasn't like God giving him a dream and the dream was like hard to understand or, no, it was clear instructions to Noah. And yeah, there could be Christians out there that maybe aren't living up to the standard that Noah was living or, aren't that righteous as far as, their faith in Jesus Christ is concerned. Like, maybe they're not living right or something like that is what I'm trying to say. So I think that there are people that are living right. And, I don't think the Bible is necessarily telling us all those things to say that, hey, one day in the future, you guys are all going to be beheaded by, the devil, in the tribulation. To me, God is telling us all those things in order to have us become prepared to escape those things. It's not necessarily just a heads up like, oh, hey, by the way, this is what it means to follow Jesus is one day in the future, unknown to you that, you'll be beheaded by, the Antichrist. No, I think there are Christians that are in the tribulation, but I totally agree with the interpretation of, it's people who, didn't necessarily heed the warning before the rapture. And so, the rapture happens and then they're left behind facing those things. I don't think they're less Christians or, they're dumb or something. No, I think it's just that, they didn't choose Jesus in the right time. I know the Bible says, to look for God while he may be found. And so clearly there is a kind of a time crunch to people finding God because it says while he may be found. So clearly there's a time where, God can't be found. it's kind of like, someone in hell, it's like, just because you're in hell and you have this revelation of God and now you want to live for God, now that you're in hell, it's like, you can't get out at that point. It's too late. Even though that person may be expressing that, they want to live for God and live righteously and, have faith in Jesus Christ, God says, no, it's too late. That's why, we're told hell is eternal, because the people in hell are not really going to change. I believe if they were really going to change, I don't think God would just keep them in there. This is just my opinion, but, I feel like if someone goes to hell, if they were going to live righteous for the rest of their life because hell changed them, then I don't see God leaving them in hell, especially if they dedicated their rest of their eternal existence to living righteously, but the Bible seems to describe hell in such a way that, the people who go to hell are never going to change. The rich man that's described in the book of Luke, even though he's expressing kind of like regret, it's more of a lie. It's more of just him saying, anything to get out of there. And I think, in our jail system, people do find Jesus Christ. And, I think, on earth, people that are in jail, can turn their life around, but in some cases, they still stay in jail, depending on their sentence. And so anyway, I think that, the day is approaching, granted, in my opinion, it's a slower revelation of, when it's going to come. I do remember, in the Bible, God, saying when the outcry reaches him, or the outcry of sin reaches him, or when sin reaches its full measure, then God, transitions the world into a new age, or a new time period, because we're waiting for the millennium to happen. I do believe that the Bible describes a 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ before we enter into the new heavens and the new earth. And so I think there's a lot of scripture to support the rapture. And, I don't think that we need to necessarily, unless you have the resources, but I don't think we, need to get an off-grid, cabin in the woods somewhere and store up food. Or, I saw advertisements for a bunker, they literally, people have come up with ideas that, they can sell you a bunker with all these other people, and you can write out, the worst that could come to earth. But, I don't even think a bunker would really help, especially if you're not a Christian. The tribulation it affects everybody. It doesn't matter, if you're in a bunker or, anywhere, the Bible says that it happens to everyone, those plagues and those, the wrath of God is affecting all people on earth. And so, I'm not even sure a bunker would really help. And, to me, there's so many left behind, ideas out there that if I saw the tribulation happening, I would probably conclude that I was left behind, that there was a rapture. I don't think I would just assume that, oh, there's no rapture. And so, I was wrong, and we do have to try to survive. Now, that's what I would do. I would try to survive the tribulation and, think of ideas to survive, but I think I would always be thinking like, no, maybe a group somewhere on earth did get raptured, And so anyway, I think there is value to, one, expecting the rapture to happen, but also, taking the time between now and the rapture to get ready. Now, I like to always mention that we could die, before a rapture happens, meaning, from one perspective, like, someone could get in a car accident or something, or, there's the realities of life, like, you get sick or something, we're just assuming that, everything is, good. Of course, someone could be listening to this in their 60s or 70s, and, it's possible that that person could fall asleep and, be in the group that gets raptured from the grave. But at the same time, I do think that, the rapture probably is soon, as we see the day approaching, that, maybe we could expect the rapture later this year or next year or in the years to come, But at the same time, I don't think we should totally get caught up in trying to predict it. I think we should really just be living our life ready. I think that's, I agree with those messages that, that's probably the best course of action is, to just be the wise virgin that, falls asleep ready. Not talking about death here, but, more along the lines of the parable where, once the cry rings out, once Jesus comes back, that you're already ready instead of, and I think the purpose of this message is that there's clearly someone out there that isn't ready. That's why, I'm mentioning get ready because, clearly the parable describes a group of Christians that, isn't ready. And, there's another parable about the servant who hides his money he buries his money. And so, there's only so much we can do, we can't rapture ourselves or, but we can, the Bible does also, I want to mention this, that the Bible seems to describe a speeding along of things that, I think this is in the book of Peter where he says that you can, basically speed along the day that Jesus returns by living righteously and, especially doing those things that specifically is talked about in the book of First Peter. But I'm just trying to give a short summary of it, which is, living righteously, living holy, keeping God's commands. And he says that you can speed up the day. And I guess, what that really means is, if we're all ready to go, God's not gonna, put off the rapture or put off the return of Christ because, hey, we're all ready. That are, everyone's ready that's going. And so clearly, God is saying that if someone isn't ready, then, he's not going to speed up. And so there is purpose to, saying that people should get ready for the rapture. And so as I end this podcast, we can talk a little bit about just some of the signs. Again, I mentioned this in the beginning of this podcast, but, I was surprised to see open prostitution happening near the big city that I live near. Of course, I live away from the city. I live about 30 to 45 minutes away from the big city. But, just going a little bit north of the city, there is open prostitution happening. And I was actually really surprised to see that. I think I heard rumors of that over the years now that I've lived here in my state, but that's going on, and that's more of a public thing. I've never seen anyone, I haven't been in that area so long where I've seen someone pick up those people that are there, but whenever I see half naked women who are wearing it's not just a hot day and so they're wearing short clothes, it's more of like lingerie type of things. I was just surprised to see that, and it was clear in my mind, like, that is prostitution right there. And so that's going on, and then I think this is happening in other cities, but I don't know, but just cold love. Jesus said that in the last days, because lawlessness abounds, the love of many will grow cold. And so, I think that is happening in the world, that, people's love for each other isn't as warm as it could be. Of course, I don't think this world is necessarily ever gonna, have a warm love, except, when Jesus returns and, he teaches us more. But anyway, there's different earth signs too, more earthquakes. We saw a huge earthquake in Turkey a few months ago, and that killed thousands of people. We see, I think, a lot of riots are a sign, riots happening and, feeding into that chaotic type city. Of course, I've heard of some even crazy news stories that I don't think I even should mention, but just by me saying that, it was some pretty crazy stuff, involving, sexual abuse or, murder or, assault. Just those type stories, I've seen in the news that are pretty crazy, happening in different parts of the world. And so anyway, hopefully you got something from this podcast. Thanks so much. And if you feel interested in supporting this podcast or this ministry, you can feel free to donate on my webpage. On my website, you'll find a place to donate at the top of the page. And so thanks so much, and I will talk to you next time. See ya.